Why is Ocean Vuong being cancelled on Substack? Shout out to my mutual Tawdry Lord who talked about this a couple of days ago. I will link her down below. But in case you don't know, Ocean Vuong wrote On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, which was a massive, massive, massive runaway success. It won a bunch of book awards. It was very, very, very popular. His new book just came out, The Emperor of Gladness, and it was an Oprah's Book Club pick. In Tawdry Lord's post, she was talking about how Ocean Vuong is also a professor, and he talks about the way that his students are very afraid of being seen as cringe, right? So he uses earnestness. Whenever he gives interviews, he cries. When he found out that he was on Oprah's Book Club, he burst into tears, and one of his takedown pieces was literally called Vuong Begins to Cry. And it is a thing that every time he is confronted with any question or any having to talk about himself in any real way, he immediately bursts into tears. I can't really talk about this without giving my perspective, right? So I did not love On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I'm not enjoying the cancellation. It feels a little bit mean. Everything started with this review in the London Review of Books by Tom Crew, My Hands in My Face, where he read The Emperor of Gladness and did not like it. He sort of went off on Ocean Vuong and was like, it's excessive, it's dramatic, it's intense. The only other thing that I will say is that part of the plot of The Emperor of Gladness involves the character who is very, very similar to Ocean Vuong, raised in the same place, same background, etc. He sells this book as one of this unlikely profound connection because the woman is an older Eastern European woman and he is a young man of Vietnamese origin. And I'm just well, it's your boyfriend's grandma. It's not like you randomly connected with this old lady. It's your boyfriend's grandma. Here's my source. It's not just me being a hater. He does say that the lady is inspired by his partner's grandma. After the review in the London Review of Books, this Substack came out that went mega, mega, mega viral. You don't understand the experience of scrolling Substack notes and seeing that every single person is talking about the same thing. This was full of attacks, and a lot of people got really mad. So the majority of these 144 comments you see are people actually defending Ocean Vuong and being how dare you write this? This is so mean. This is in the Discord Review of Books. It got cut off for some reason, but basically their point was that the idea of blunt force ethnic credibility, this idea that because the audience is made up of mostly white people, they don't understand what he's actually talking about, and they see Vuong as this emissary who's delivering all of these beautiful poems to people, but they don't necessarily connect to it. So they see it all as a performance or a spectacle instead of actually accessing what he's saying. On Reddit, they called him a charlatan and they're just going in on him. Basically, this review opened up the floodgates to everyone who hated him sort of openly talking about how much they hated him. Someone said that he cultivated this image of being a harmless little twink, and someone else said that he turned his life into a spectacle. I liked what this person said, basically saying that this is the cultural practice that we're all familiar with, right? I talk about this on Substack all the time, where I say that people are very used to performing their trauma for the masses, right? The traumification of reality TV, the idea that the only story you have to tell is your sad story, so you have to get out in front of people and perform your pain for everyone to be seen as legible, especially for people of color. But people were also defending him. So Malavika Kannan, who I met at an event a couple of weeks ago and I thought was brilliant. I cannot wait to read her book. Basically was saying that if you don't like Ocean Vuong, you can read other Asian American writers, right? There's not this idea that you're beholden to only reading him because he's not the only one. But I do recommend this piece because she had a really, really, really good litany of reasons that Asian American art is so constricted into certain boxes. And this piece also went viral, sort of defending him. There are a ton of these. I feel I'm of two minds about this because every writer has haters, right? And the fact that he is so famous and got so famous so quickly obviously sort of opened him up to hate. And obviously, I'm not the most emotional person. I don't perform earnestness. I don't believe in millennial victim culture. I don't believe in using your ethnic trauma as pain to sort of make yourself more accessible to the other. So there are reasons that this wouldn't work for me, but he's a good writer. You know what I mean? I read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I didn't love it because it was a little bit overwrought for me personally, but that doesn't mean that he's a bad writer. I do think this is a case of people taking all of these different things. We are in this weird cultural moment where we are sort of regressing back into this very aggressive sort of conservative mentality where it's this is too much, you have to relax. But I do think that Vuong carved out a niche for himself in this idea of being the most sensitive man in the world who's gonna burst into tears at the drop of a hat, which is fine. But I do think that we need to criticize him on if you're gonna criticize him, you should criticize him on the merits of the work versus you don't like that he's a deeply emotional person, because some people are just like that. And on this account, I often talk about the performance of the self, right? When I talk about reality TV stars and influencers and people on here. But there is this idea that when you're an author and you have to go on book tour and you have to sell yourself, there is this idea that maybe your books will sell more if you burst into tears every time someone asks you a question. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing. That just is a thing, right? There is sometimes this very, very accessible niche that people fall into and are fine, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to make the most money possible while I'm doing it. But I will not take away from his talent because I do think that he is very, very, very good. And I literally have this book. I bought it and I will read it eventually. If you have this conversation in certain places, the idea is that people don't like to see a man be soft. People don't like to see a man who's in touch with his femininity. People don't like to see, especially a queer man who is so in touch with his feelings. And again, there is that idea of like how much trauma is too much trauma, right? Like you can't tell someone not to write about their legacy and like where they come from and their people when that is his history, like literally. I don't know. I think everyone is a little bit valid and everyone is a little bit wrong in this situation, but I do think that the like intense pileup is a lot because this is what will inevitably happen, right? It will turn into a thing of everyone sort of no longer hearing your criticisms and saying that this is like an unfair representation of this person's work versus like actually listening to the criticisms.